Hello and welcome to this episode of Talk Franchise, Home Instead's podcast series aiming to give you an insight into the world of franchising. My name is Luke Spellman. I'm Franchise Development Manager at Home Instead, and today I'm joined by Imogen Clarke, Head of Franchise Development. We'll be discussing how Home Instead stays ahead in an ever-changing sector, how we ensure that our franchisees have the right support and guidance to grow successful businesses, and ultimately how we navigate the changing world around us. Hope you enjoy. Imi, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me. I think this is your third episode?
I think fourth.
There's been so many. No, thank you for joining me. We've got a special kind of episode today, which in some ways wraps up a lot of the episodes we've had. In other ways, kind of adds context to things that we say about the brand in other places. So I think this is almost a nice sort of wrap up kind of episode. And today we're really going to be focusing on why Home Instead as a brand stands out in an ever evolving sector. So I guess we'll work through sort of various topics and areas, and we'll attempt to kind of add some context and explanation for people who just want to know a bit more about the care sector or actually know nothing at all, and this might be their first sort of understanding of how this all works and how Home Instead is positioned in that. Before we fully jump in, could you give a bit of an introduction into yourself for those who have never listened before?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Imogen, or Imi. I am Head of Franchise Development at Home Instead. And myself and the team, we support people who are looking into franchising, particularly into Home Instead. So myself and the team, we do a lot of work with the British Franchise Association. We're really passionate about just educating people about franchising in general. And if they want to know about Home Instead too, that's an added bonus. So that is me. I've been at Home Instead since 2013 and just loved my entire time with the brand, but also within franchising as well. It's a very unusual sector in the fact that it's very collaborative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of the things I suppose that we've learned have maybe come from non-competing franchise brands, and additionally the information we've been able to share with franchise brands just starting off or that are facing a particular challenge. You're right, it's very collaborative and it's quite energetic for that reason, isn't it? Well, thank you. Welcome. So I guess to start off, let's talk a bit more about the home care sector generally before we kind of get into Home Instead. So could you reflect on really the current state of the home care sector and maybe some of the problems and challenges that everyone is facing within that?
Yeah. So the home care sector is a growing market. We've got a rapidly growing aging population. The Home Care Association, they say that since 2020, the home care sector has grown by about 12%. So it's massive growth in the sector, and it's only continuing to grow. And you see that in the businesses that are starting up as care providers as well. So the sector's coming up against two big challenges. So we've firstly got a challenge we've always had, which is recruitment of care professionals or carers, if you're thinking of the wider sector. That's a challenge we've always come up against for the past 20 years. And obviously, we've got loads of different ways to combat that. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the second change, which is much newer. So you've got the budget changes because of Labour and the national insurance increase. But then you've also got the Employment Rights Bill, which is changing probably at the end of this year, 2025.
So there are sort of these macro factors that kind of impact care businesses really on the whole, and I guess people-heavy businesses in particular.
Yes, and you're right. It's not a sector-specific worry. It's kind of everybody, but yes, predominantly we are people, and you've got to bear that in mind.
Yeah,
we've got loads of care providers working together to lobby against this change, and that home care should be exempt. Mm-hmm. They have made exempt government-owned care companies.
Okay.
So it's something that we see is pretty unfair. But we're all working together to try and get some change. But right now, that's where we're up to as a sector.
Great, thank you. So, given those kind of challenges that are sort of being faced within home care on the whole, can we talk a bit about sort of Home Instead's position within that? How we will kind of elaborate on various points throughout our conversation, I'm sure, but kind of in a nutshell, how is Home Instead ensuring our franchisees don't face these challenges in quite a severe way?
So I'm kind of laughing when I say this because I think every home care provider says we're number one. We actually are, and we can evidence why we're number one. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later. I would say for us as a national office and a franchisor, we're premium. So we charge a higher rate to our clients, which means that there's a bit of a buffer, which the traditional care providers, the ones that are just providing the 5-minute, 10-minute calls, they don't have that. And what that means is we are already seeing, probably similar in a few different sectors, but those companies are having to close down because they don't have the profitability that they need. Yeah, okay. So we are private pay care. We don't go for local authority contracts because that's where you get that such short profitability, and that's what is causing companies to close down. So we've got that as an aside. But for us, we've got a large team very passionate about our franchisees and very passionate about what we do and make a difference. And I would say probably the majority of us at the office have had experienced either poor care or care with Home Instead and thankfully seen the difference. So we've got that drive behind us. And there's a team of us all working on different ways to ensure that the businesses are able to run more efficiently, more cost effectively, and they're able to just kind of have that little extra buffer for them to be able to succeed in quite a difficult time.
And so is it fair to say then, as kind of challenges that you mentioned, let's take national insurance as an example, as these sort of macro challenges pop up, is it fair to say that Home Instead, national office in particular, is doing a lot of the thinking and planning on how our franchisees can actually navigate that? Definitely
so. And our brand is 20 years old, so a lot of businesses, organisations in the sector and outside of the sector know who we are. So we are often called upon at times like this to be the voice for our perspective. But we've also strategically put different directors on our board into particular boards. Like Martin, our CEO, he's on the Home Care Association board. He has a lot of interaction with Number 10 Downing Street. He's been invited several times. And we definitely do that strategically to get our voice at the front because we are representing our brand and our franchisees, but we're also representing the sector as well. The other thing I would say is, we've got a really strong team. I know we're going to talk about it a bit later, but we've got a large team to be able to go into these different avenues to support our franchisees that perhaps other franchisors don't have the capacity and resources to be able to do. Yeah,
there's almost layers of support that can really help people navigate things that they might not be able to manage on their own or would struggle to.
Absolutely. So you've got like the frontline support, which are some of our colleagues, and then it goes a little bit further behind, and then you've got the strategy a little bit higher. So it's all, as you said, these different layers.
Yeah. Great. And so it's clear then that, the home care sector's changing and there are things that are impacting really, well, all sectors. But there's also a lot of less so challenges, but things to be mindful of in the changing world. So I'm thinking about things like technology and our use of AI generally. So let's just set the scene on that and less about what's Home Instead's approach to AI, but more about when things like that come along, what's Home Instead's position for how we navigate that with our network?
So it's probably worth noting that we are owned by a tech company based in Silicon Valley. So our how we look at this is probably a little bit more open-minded than any other business.
Yeah.
So for us, we embrace tech. It's never going to replace care, but it will be able to support care, definitely so. And our franchisees feel the same. And those guys are the ones providing the care, they are on the ground doing this. And it's really important that we listen to them. So we absolutely have initiatives. We have different groups that are looking at different tech. We've got the US doing things as well. But we'll have our franchisees going out and finding out these things themselves. And we've done different trials with our franchisees with certain AI products that are out there to be able to find the best fit for us. But really importantly, what gives the best return on investment? Because if there's something that is costing you £1,000, but it saves you 3 days of work, is that worth it? You know, it might be for a larger office, it might not be for a smaller office. So it's looking at when you can build in these different products through your business journey.
Yeah, introducing them at the right time so it doesn't actually become a hindrance. So it's clear then that actually there's a culture of innovation, focusing on quality and really kind of looking to the future and saying, how do we have to adapt and be agile, and how can we ensure our franchisees are upskilled or actually just on a basic level feel comfortable with those changes? There's quite a lot in that, isn't there?
I think so. And also listening to the franchisee. I think that's a common misperception that as a larger franchisor, you just are doing whatever you think is right and you're not listening to the network around you. Well, what a silly perception to have, because you've got 260 experts. They are, with it as in our franchisees, they are running their businesses day to day. They're there on the ground. They can tell us these improvements. So we're kind of working in collaboration together. That's the way we've always been. That's the way our culture is in Home Instead.
Yeah, a wonderful symbiosis. We all kind of work together towards the same thing. Well, great. I think that that kind of sets the scene, and I think sort of almost contextualizes the other bits that we'll speak about. So we spoke then a few times really about the support that we offer. So let's dive into that a little bit more. We're very proud of the fact that our support and the efforts we put into that have won various awards. There's accreditations for training, and we really pride ourselves on the number of people at national office that are there to support our franchisees, and in a way believe that's paramount to helping them be successful. So a thing that we always refer to, and you and I know exactly what this means, but it sort of dawned on me that not everyone might understand, why is this even important? So we're really proud of the fact that we have a 4-to-1 ratio of franchisees to support, to members of staff at national office that support. So with 260 franchisees, there's just under 70 people at national office. Why is a 4-to-1 ratio even important, and what does that mean? Why is that better support for people?
Yeah. So it's obviously going to depend on you as an individual coming into a franchise and what you want to see. Myself, you know, if I was investing my life savings and I was ready to start a business up from scratch or perhaps buy a resale, I would want to know that all the support that I would ever need is available to me. So so for us, our ratio is 4-to-1. That means that for every 4 offices, we've got 1 member of the team at national office. And that's how we always like to work. So even when we were much smaller, we worked on the same ratio. So what we do is we're constantly investing before growth, because that's how we grow. And it's very similar to our franchisees. When they're growing, they've invested in new team members into the office, or perhaps new tech, or whatever it might be. We work in exactly the same way, because that's the only way we'll be able to support our growing network. Now, to put that into context, there are many other brands out there. I don't know if there are actually any brands that match our 4-to-1 ratio, unless they're much smaller as a franchisor. But if we look at some of the large food and beverage brands, you know, some of them will have a 20-to-1 ratio. So for 20 franchise businesses, they've got 1 member of the team. Some of them have got 120-to-1. So it really puts it into perspective when you start shopping around, seeing what kind of support is available and what fits well.
Yeah, and I suppose even just on kind of a rudimentary mathematical level, if our days at work are supposed to be for the support of our franchisees, in a way, we have the time to support 4 people in that day. 120-to-1, you know, suddenly actually the efficiency of that support, the speed at which you can come back to franchisees, the speed at which you can drop stuff and help them navigate something, it's surely slower and it's clunkier and might actually be more more separated, almost like this is your problem to navigate.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, an example of that is COVID. I know it's, thank goodness, a long distant memory, but I remember in COVID, who wanted a franchise in the first couple of weeks? Nobody.
Yeah.
And so it meant that we were able to work in a different way to be able to support our franchisees in finding PPE or supporting them with their financials, and just really working agilely with our network. And, you know, we've seen it 20 years in, 260 offices. We have come up against things that we didn't imagine we'd ever come up against. And with a ratio of 4-1, if something happens in a particular business and, you know, that is needed, we are able to get down there to that office because what we do is so important.
Yeah, great. So we've sort of spoken about the ratio in and of itself, but let's talk more specifically about the people available to our franchisees, and the teams and sort of functions that they have. So do you want to sort of reflect on the support that's available and maybe mention where it is unique and kind of unique to Home Instead? Make special reference to that.
Yeah, of course. So, pressure's on. So I would say what's unique to Home Instead is one of the ways in which we provide support. So we've built out the franchise journey, and that's based on your revenue as well as your age in the business, so size and age.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on that is, you know, we know at a particular size, you'll come up against certain challenges and you kind of get over those, you'll grow, and then you come up against more challenges like any business.
Yeah.
So your business operations support is supported by a team, but we match offices depending on their size and their stage with a particular business consultant.
Yeah.
So if you're stepping in completely new and you're setting up from scratch, well, you will always be with Claire, who just knows that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's been doing that for 12 years now. You know, you then kind of graduate from Claire and you move on to the next business consultant who knows where you are and how to get to the next point and what challenges you'll come up against, what staff members you need to bring on, where the pain points are going to be. So they're almost a little bit like crystal balls. They're reading the future because they know what's going to happen because that's what their portfolio is, and they know how to get you to the next stage. So I would say that's the most unique part of Home Instead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're walking into something where the person supporting you knows exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, with the size of business we're 20 years old. We've got franchisees that are that old, and revenue-wise, we're just continuing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this large kind of breadth of offices, and we've got support with knowledgeable people in every single range, whereas perhaps the smaller franchisors, they don't know how to get to this point. They've never done it before.
Yeah.
We've built that path, and we've got the US as well who've built it even further. And we can see that ourselves. You know, the US have come up against challenges perhaps 10 years ago that now we're coming up against.
Yeah.
And so we can build that with them together.
Yeah. So there's kind of an immediate plan of action when someone faces a new challenge or grows into kind of a new arena or kind of stage.
Yes.
So let's talk then about what support actually looks like, because I often get questions from people. I think support is a word that people commonly read and understand, but actually I think at Home Instead it's a bit more holistic and sort of wrap around and personal to each franchisee than it could otherwise be. So a particular franchisee is facing, let's say, a problem with marketing, or they have an amazing idea for how to do some local marketing. What would their kind of route for support for that activity look like?
So I mentioned the business operations team before. Usually that is the person that they first speak to because they know them the best, and that person knows the business. So if they're talking about, say they're a very small business and they're talking about, I'm going to set up my own event, I'm going to invite thousands of people, the business consultant would be saying, perhaps this isn't the right time to do this. This sounds amazing, but perhaps in a few years, or collaborate with some other local businesses. But say, yes, you know, your business operations person has said, looks really great. You then obviously would just speak to the marketing team, and we're not this faceless corporation. You know, you come into national office at your training, you meet everybody. And there's one point where you're sitting in your training and everyone's around you. So you absolutely meet everybody. So if you've got, you know, an idea about social media, well, you'd speak to our social media manager.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were talking about the website, well, you'd speak to our data analyst or whatever the issue was.
Yeah.
We've got these experts that you can speak to give their experience and knowledge. The franchisees coming at it from a local level, and then we come to something that actually really does support you.
Yeah.
And there have been so many times where ideas in the network, they've brought it to us and we've just thought, this is amazing. And we've launched it out to the network for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah.
I would say it comes back to that collaboration. That's our support. It's collaboration. You need to tell us you need help, and we can work with you together to get to the best point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose there is often, and the horror stories within franchising, maybe some of the some brands that you see that pop up in towns and close down a year later, maybe some smaller fast food kind of chains, for example, that almost tarnishes the word franchising. Certainly from the feedback I get from various people coming to us, almost say, I've had a poor experience with another franchise brand before. And what it seemed like is the one thing lacking was support for actually running that business. That in a way, this franchise brand was focused more on selling the territory area, and then actually it's job done. And now, that franchisee's got to navigate that themselves. And I suppose one of the amazing things that really part of the purpose of this episode in and of itself is to make it clear that we aren't supporting you just to help you run a business. Actually, we are invested in the success of your business, and the support is not a little added benefit. It is very much our offering as a brand. We can't have the amazing team and colleagues that we do and the kind of the culture at Home Instead without our amazing franchisees. And so the way in which they have to kind of work together is important to make clear when I think people come at this with an idea that franchisors are just there to take money and not help you make it.
And as someone that works in the franchising sector and loves the franchising sector, it's really disappointing to hear that brands do operate in that way. That isn't the norm, but it is unfortunate, I suppose, like any sector. But I mean, look at, the team around us, if we're talking years, so it ages the podcast, but I've been here, 13 years. You've been here 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, I just mentioned Claire, who's been here for 12. Our finance director's been here for 13. Our COO's been here for, I think, 16 years now. We just celebrated our front of house, Wendy. She's been 15 years.
15 it was, yeah.
So it's just all of these, our CEO, Martin, he's been here for, gosh, I hope he's not listening, I think 14 years. So we've been around a long time because we really, truly care about our franchisees. I think franchising can get a bad rep. I think you're right, because it seems like these pyramid schemes where you're just building on more and more sales and then off you go.
Yeah.
But look at the team that is at head office, national office, go and see them, look at the ratio and see how long people are here. And if that's one of the concerns, are you just selling me a territory and off you go? Well, ask them how many people are in the sales team.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, that's a really good point, and I think a lot of people definitely aren't of the view that all franchise brands are bad, but there are those stories out there, and it's I'm glad to kind of cover that for those people. So let's move on and think about our approach to marketing and sort of brand leadership. How we build the brand and kind of reputation of Home Instead nationally, and also how we help people build that locally too. So we did just kind of speak about marketing from a support point of view briefly, but let's actually dive more into the actual marketing activity and how that actually helps our franchisees. Yeah.
So as I said before, it's a growing sector. And so as you can imagine, there are competitors that are moving into that sector. When we started, I think we were one of 4 care providers. Now, as in franchising, now we're one of 20, 25. So it's definitely got a lot more franchise brands in there. But actually, we actually welcome it as a brand. We're very stable. We've got our niche. And there's enough in the market for all of us anyway. You can see that. And you can see that in the way we interact with the other brands when we see them at different events. So Firstly, I would say that, but it's so important for us with that in mind that we always position ourselves as number one where we rightly fit. And so our marketing team do an amazing job of actually reaching out to the different people. So we call them CAFEs, the people that are looking for care. They're not usually the people who are receiving care. So we look at how we can approach that person at the time of crisis, because care is a crisis purchase. So we need to be there straight away.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple of different ways that we do that. So we'll look at, your traditional marketing, and then you've got your digital marketing. And I would say that's probably reflected in the way our marketing team is structured. You've got people who are focused on the more traditional pieces, and then the rest of the team are focused on the digital. Obviously all aligned and work together, but they've got their strengths and their expertise, and they are respecting each other's expertise and knowledge on what the best way is to do these different things. And so that's how we do that nationally, but that's also how we want our franchisees to emulate that on a local level as well. So the marketing team give them all of the kind of tools. It's like teaching a man to fish. This is what we've done, this is what we've seen that's worked, and this is how you can replicate this in your local area for success. Yeah,
and some sort of research into what's worked well in these other territories, therefore how can it be applied in your local area, and the utilization of data and demographics that we have to feed into that. And there are a lot of things that almost hit both the national and kind of the local market at the same time, isn't there? Like I'm thinking about sort of, let's say, Google advertising, where that's something that we manage nationally. It's always on. It benefits all of our franchisees. So it, on a local level, someone in a rural town somewhere Googles, home care near me, and they'll see this ad. This both builds the national brand and makes sure that people across the UK can see us, whilst being hyper focused on a local area too. So there are a lot of kind of examples of that. And let's speak then about the brand leadership side. Martin is very heavily involved in thought leadership. We, as well as wanting to build the brand of Home Instead, we also want to build the awareness of the expertise and kind of position that we have as well, don't we? So could you sort of reflect on our thought leadership approach as well?
So thought leadership, we will look at very strategically. An example of that is Martin, who's our CEO, being awarded an MBE for his work with older people. Mm-hmm. So everything is really, really well thought out and considered, and positioning us in a certain way, which is very well justified as well. I think what we do really well, and what the marketing team do really well, is thinking about, as I mentioned before, kind of what clients and their family members who are looking for care, what they'll be looking at too.
Yeah.
So we did a piece of work, and it is the only piece of work of its kind. It's called the New Aging Index. And what that was is the marketing team went out and, figuratively, we had a third-party experience company do this, but went out and spoke to older people about how they actually wanted to age. And the results came back and it was crazy. More people were worried about going into a care home than they were losing their partner to death. And that just told us so much. There are other stats that, people kind of from the age of 65 just feel ignored as a consumer to big brands. And that's, they're this growing population. It's getting bigger and bigger. And the majority of, they feel ignored by big brands. And that's massive. So we did a lot of work on that, and then we rolled that out. And we're not kind of too precious about this is Home Instead's work. It's actually, this is what was being told. We need to tackle this, and we need to lean into this and face this, rather than just having this generation, going away. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's always the way older people have been treated, unfortunately, in society.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they're real people, and they should be feeling involved in their society. They want to be, and the data really shows that. So it's the kind of pioneering things like that our marketing team do.
Yeah.
Another one was the Take Care campaign that they did, which every time I watch it, I just cry. And just to set the scene for people listening who haven't seen it, it is a video of a few different people who are juggling caring for their parents. They may have young kids or kind of teenage kids. They will have really busy careers, and you'll see them at points in their day where they're really struggling. So an example is this lady, she's got a really important meeting that day, and then I think it's her dad that calls her, and you just know that he needs her. And you can just see her thinking, what do I do? And she makes the right decision. You know, she goes to her dad, and but you just see these little pain points through the day of them struggling. So we made that video, and then we then presented that to real life people in that day to day. And you could just see how much it meant to them to firstly be recognized and be able to connect with this journey. And again, this isn't like a sales pitch for Home Instead. You know, we're not saying get our care today, but it's actually just putting this forward as a problem in society that is kind of skated over because it's easier to do that than actually address it. So I keep saying we because it's we at Home Instead, but it's the marketing team because they're the experts. They are really leaning into these issues and talking about how people can be helped.
Yeah. And I suppose that's part of how we go beyond simply being a care provider and actually position ourselves as being fundamental to the aging kind of a problem in this country. Not a problem that people are getting older, but the implications of having a larger, older population.
And I would just say it's ethically, for us, it's ethically working as a business. You know, we're seeing a problem, we're highlighting how a sector can help, but also just what those issues are, and you're not alone. We aren't just talking about Home Instead and how fantastic we are. That's not where our budget goes. It is talking about the problems in society and how home care generally can help.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of campaigns that are going to keep you as the thought leader in your sector. Whereas if you're just banging on about care provider A that is really great and looks after their carers amazingly, fantastic for you. But actually, what are you doing to battle the issues that we face in society?
Yeah, great point. We could talk about that for a long time.
We could.
So we might have to move on. But no, a really good point. And I think rightly said that marketing are not only are they there to advertise and promote the services. Of course, that's a fundamental part of what they do. But actually, the positioning of us as a brand and our franchisees at a local level and how they help tackle that in a community, and that's really part. That's really part of the core of Home Instead, isn't it?
And don't get me wrong, as you said, we sponsor on Classic FM, we advertise on ITV, we're on Sky News, BBC News, we've got strategic partnerships with Parkinson's UK and other really great brands that align with what we're here for. But fundamentally, we're also having this kind of overarching piece as well. Yeah,
well said. So let's move on to talk about the proven model, and how ultimately this leads to franchisee success. Again, this is another thing that I think we talk about so often that it's obvious what we mean by a model and what we mean by proven. But it is also wording that could be thrown around quite loosely, and it just refers to a business or something like that. When we talk about our proven model, what is that?
So our proven model, bearing in mind that we're 20 years old in the UK, and then, we've got another 10 years on top of that in the US as well. So 20 years in the UK, because it's a very different market. So we've had 20 years, how many times am I going to say that? With 260 offices, all operating successfully. Really, if we're just looking at the care sector, what other brand has or is doing that?
Yeah.
There aren't any others. So we've got this this vast experience of when it can go wrong and what happens. I think it then links into the support I mentioned earlier with the franchise journey. Mm-hmm. We know where you are and where you're going to get to. So everything is mapped out. So if you're stepping into a new business or, if you're stepping into a resale, you are looking at it and you can see, right, my revenue is here. This is what I'm looking at right now. Where my revenue is, this is kind of where my care pros are, the size, and this is my office team. These are my costs. We can actually tell you from this day what it can look like in 3 years.
Yeah.
So what team members you need to bring on, how you're investing in growth, what you need do in terms of marketing, how much you need to spend. It's all mapped already for you. And yes, there is definitely opportunities for flexibility and thinking about ideas and bringing that back to us. But as somebody, when you're investing your life savings, and we can confidently and honestly say to you, you're stepping in today and you will be continuing to grow. As long as you've got the drive and dedication and you want to work with us, you will be growing for the next 3, 5, 10 years, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so you should expect to see that in a franchisor. If you don't have that mapped out, if you don't have the financials mapped out for you for the first 5 years, where, how are you even going to know what success looks like?
Yeah.
But actually basing it on achievables, because it's fantastic saying you can achieve $1 million in year 1, year 2. Where's the proof? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one office that has done that and it was their third business? Okay, that's a little bit less. It's a little bit less tangible for me to be able to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to look at what's around, and I would say that's a proven model. You can see that consistently in the network.
Yeah, and I guess the transparency of things as well. If someone's coming into this, of course, one of the priorities is going to be, look, I know Homestead says that they do this thing, but how do I know that you actually do it? I guess, the transparency of information that we share is really important, but also the willingness for potential franchisees to go out there and speak to all of our existing franchisees is a really, really core part of that too, isn't it? Because actually you can ask very candid questions of people away from the salespeople. Actually you can speak very honestly, what are the challenges and is this what they say it is? And I suppose it's a really good point that you raised about the sheer number of franchises around the country. I think there's 90% coverage now of the UK, and actually the fact that it's worked in urban settings in the centre of London, suburban areas that sort of span out of a kind of a city area into a rural area, and then really, really rural areas, add in things like coastal areas where that might have more of a seasonal population. There are unique challenges and geographical ones and even just road network ones that all territories will face. And when we are talking about 260 franchises, what we have seen ourselves is that this now works. This works across all of those variables. And certainly different strategic decisions need to be made to, in a really rural area, take into account you've got a 40-mile wide territory or something like that. But that's nothing more than an operational consideration, isn't it? And so, I think it's the number is one of those things to look at too for people, isn't it? How many proof points do you have? Because if there's 10, you can prove it 10 times. If there's 260, prove it 260 times. So let's talk then about territories. How can someone have the confidence coming into this that their territory they're buying is viable for a successful business? So
at times people will see our territories and think, that's not a very nice area. I don't really want this in my territory.
Yeah.
Well, actually, this is going to really grow your business, this area, believe it or not. Sounds crazy. We map our territories, as you know, because it's an area of your expertise. So we map our territories based on real data. Yeah. So we've got all of our client data and all of our care professional data, and we send that to a third-party specialist company. From there, they can then address what kind of profile that person is.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have come across Mosaic, a lot of people in the marketing industry. It's very similar to that kind of software. So based on that software, we know roughly what kind of value house a client will have, what kind of car they'll drive, what kind of paper they'll read, they'll do digital, etc. Mm-hmm. And so there, we've got a number of different profiles of clients because we've got, 17,000 clients, we've got 11,000 care pros.
Yeah.
A lot of data. Then we can see those profiles of people and where they live in a territory. So you might be saying to us, well, I don't want this area because it's not very nice. Well, that area will have maybe 6,000 potential care professionals. You want that area because that neighbour's an area with 6,000 clients. And so you need those there for those people to be able to care for the clients who literally neighbour by a postcode.
Yeah. So that mixture is really important in a territory, isn't it? what you said initially about that gut feel that people have. Maybe they've been to a place before, or they used to live there, and they just think, I just don't think a private care company could work there. But maybe that what they're not considering is that you also need the other 50%, which are the people to deliver that care.
I think what also can be something that people get muddled over is the size of the territory. So you mentioned it before. If you're going to be near a city, geographically, obviously that territory is going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah.
The further out you go, it's going to be a lot larger. And we base it on population. Sometimes though territories can be too big. So, and people are probably thinking, but they can. And we've seen that ourselves. We've seen franchisees coming in the early days and buying these giant areas, but they only operate as one.
Yeah.
And they will be, we've seen it. So if we compare in terms of age, they'll be doing like a similar revenue. But actually when you compare on the number of potential clients in there, they're doing really poorly. And it's because, you've got one office in this giant territory. You can't cover it all. You need to be much more strategic. And that's where the franchisor should come in and step in and say, look, this is what we need to do. We need to carve this up into 2, maybe even 3. And it's operating as 3 businesses. And I think where franchisors can slip up a little bit is where they say, we've got these giant territories.
Yeah.
Here you go. It's yours for this franchise fee. Well, actually, that's probably going to be more pain for you in the long run, because you're going to have neighbours that are overtaking you because they're able to really dip into their territory so easily because it's more manageable.
Yeah.
Whereas a larger one, you struggle.
Yeah. And if you get a client inquiry that's 30 or 40 miles away and your care professional is 30 miles that way because you've got such a broad territory, then you might have to turn that client away. And actually that person was keen for your business. So yeah, you're right that smaller actually is manageable. And I guess it's important to speak in some way about the numbers, as in it doesn't take that many clients to create a successful business. Yeah. And that's because of the kind of care that we deliver and the longevity of the care that we deliver too, right? So when you are looking at a territory and there's a minimum of 25,000 over 65s, but actually it could take 160 clients to build a £2 million business. The question you got to ask yourself is, could you find 160 clients, or could you find 200 or whatever you're setting your sights on out of those 25,000? And normally more than 25,000, but that's kind of the minimum for us, isn't it? So we're actually talking very, very manageable numbers, and rather than trying to get as many clients as possible, you're instead cherishing each individual one for the sake of long-term support. And
I mean, we've just done the data on this. For a business that's turning over more than £3 million a year, they have less than 0.2% of older people in their territory as clients. So they're just getting started. They're not even scratching the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of raises another point as well, which is, so you can grow your business by increasing the number of clients. You can grow your business by increasing the number of hours of care that a client receives. But, over the last few years, we've introduced living care and healthcare at home, for example. How are things like this helping our franchisees to continue to grow their business?
Yeah. Well, it's like a completely additional service that they've never had to even look at. So for them, it's just opened up a completely new client base. And it's really interesting to see that some of our offices, probably more of the larger ones than the smaller ones, just due to capacity, are really focusing on specialisms as well, which again opens up a completely new door. So for our franchisees, it's fantastic because what they bought is a business based on companionship. So, like helping out in the home and personal care. So the traditional way you'd think of needing care.
Yeah.
That's what they've bought it. But actually you've then got, as you said, live-in care, healthcare, just this massive kind of open door. And with the support of tech, and where are we going to go to in the next 10, 15 years? It just opens the door massively for us. Yeah.
And if you have the confidence that the brand you're buying into is actually keen for those new challenges and is agile as all these things change around it.
And has the resources to grow.
And has the resources to grow. Yeah. So the last thing on sort of the topic of proven models and franchise success that I think is worth speaking about is multi-unit. There are lots and lots of conversations that we both have with people who want one territory and they want to do it really well. And we're there to cherish and empower those people. But there are also a lot of other highly ambitious individuals who want as many territories as they can get and to grow that. So can we reflect on that a little bit and how actually the proven model applies to that too?
Yes. So I think it's really important when we are talking about multi-unit that we're very clear that we still recruit for single operators.
Yeah.
And our single operators in the network, we still very much want on our journey with home instead.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-unit is an additional piece that provides further expansion for our franchisees. So multi-unit for us, we were always a single operator. We thought you needed one franchisee in one operation, and that was that. And it's probably around 2019, we went to the franchise show and we saw some of our really great owners looking for something else because their operation was working really well without their day-to-day involvement, and they were a bit bored. And it was a wake-up call for us that actually we should be looking at multi-unit. And I mentioned earlier having like a big territory and operating just as one had put us off. That really had put us off multi-unit. And actually it was the approach from us that was wrong. So we expanded into multi-unit, and it's a fantastic opportunity for somebody stepping in that wants, a big enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
but for something that they really care about and they're really passionate about. And I think in franchising, the beauty franchising brings is, a business in a box, but the ability to add on as you go along because you're already experienced in that area.
Yeah.
So multi-unit is really exciting. We're now 6 years into our multi-unit journey and still continuing. We've got some fantastic multi-unit franchisees that are doing amazing work, and we're obviously looking for more around the UK. As I said, we're still looking for single operators. I think multi-unit, sometimes people think they're like last to market because, as you said, we're 90% covered in the UK.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you've got resales. So resales are, I'm sure people already know, but just for ease, resales are existing businesses where franchisees have set up from scratch. They've grown their business to a point and they're ready now to retire, perhaps move abroad, whatever it might be. The BFA, the British Franchise Association, they say, really it's healthy to have about 20% of the network for sale at any one point.
Okay.
Obviously, that depends on the age of the franchisor. If they're like a couple of years old, perhaps that's a bit of a red flag. But generally about 20%. That shows, and again, this will depend on the sector and the model that you're looking at, but that shows that you're buying into something that you can build as an asset.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're building this business, you're building the value, and then you're able to sell it. That's a really important question actually to ask when you're speaking to franchisors. What is the sellability? Scalability of this business. So resales brings such a massive opportunity to somebody looking at multi-unit because you might set up from scratch, neighbouring a territory that's 10 years old. Well, they might be selling in 2 years and you'll have the opportunity to buy that business, or you buy a resale and that person set up 15 years ago and they're really close to their neighbour who set up 12 years ago, and them selling to you kind of sets off the neighbour thinking, maybe I should think about selling now.
Yeah.
And so you do sometimes see a bit of a domino effect, not because, they don't enjoy you as a neighbour, but because they've realised, my neighbour has sold, they're only like 2 years ahead of me. I'm thinking about my future and what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm at the stage now in my life where I'm ready to move on. So multi-unit's a massive opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great. And I guess the final point that I'll sort of raise on that is you were mentioning before the operational support that's provided at different stages. And, as people could then move into that kind of multi-unit stage, the support doesn't go anywhere. It just changes to a more multi-unit or enterprise focused support, doesn't it? Because as soon as there's elements of centralization or you're spanning across a larger geographical area, there are just different challenges faced, and therefore you need to adjust the support.
Completely agree. And so it's a good point. What is the multi-unit support there? Are there dedicated groups? Do you have a dedicated consultant who knows about all of this? is that brand just jumping into multi-unit because it's kind of a fad right now?
Mm-hmm.
What is the reason and what is the criteria? And it comes back to that sales team you mentioned earlier. If they're just selling multi-unit after multi-unit after multi-unit to get that cash in,
Mm-hmm.
that's a bit of a red flag. Look at, is there criteria? Because you should be expecting that. Is there criteria I need to adhere to as a franchisee to get my next one? And it might feel a little bit frustrating for you, but thinking big picture, you know that your business that you're buying is in safe hands because we're thinking about how stable that is at that time. You want to then expand into another one.
Yeah, great point. So let's move on then. Another topic that we could have spoken about for ages, the model of franchisee success. So a big concern for people coming into any care business, whether they're starting something independently or buying into a franchise, is compliance. How do you navigate the standards of the regulator, and how do you ensure that you are both compliant and delivering high quality care? There's clearly a worry in people who've never worked in care before or kind of adjacent sectors where they think, I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. So could you comment on sort of how our quality and compliance support looks and how it can reassure new franchisees that we've got their backs on that?
Yeah. Compliance and quality will always come up in conversations because the majority of our franchisees do not come from a background in care. I would say probably the people that we've recruited in the past 7-8 years, I wouldn't say any of them have come from a background in care.
Mm-hmm.
And in total, I would say about 5%, if that, have come from that background.
Yeah.
So it's not something that we're looking for. It's not something that we need. We're really looking for that business acumen.
Yeah.
And national office and our teams are there to support you in that compliance. So it's that business in a box. You're following the model and you're following that compliance. We have a dedicated team, the quality team, who make sure that the franchisees know exactly like the model to follow, and then they are audited on their business. I think sometimes auditing can seem like a scary thing, quite intimidating. It's not. It's making sure that you and your team are in the right place. And where there are areas to improve, because it's really important. Somebody coming from outside the care sector, which is the most common thing for us, they can be a little bit nervous because, it almost seems safer to provide a service or a product in a particular location and the client visits that location. Well, for that, really your opportunity for growth is capped kind of at really how big that one location is before then investing massively into a larger location.
Mm-hmm.
For us, you've got the training that we provide for you, for your team, because they're going out to visit clients. So they've got that training already and that knowledge. You've then got the expertise within your team who we help you recruit. And so you've got that sound confidence that your team around you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So with a new business, we're supporting and recruiting those people. With a resale, if you're looking for the next team member, we can also support you in recruiting that person. If you're looking for a senior team member, again, we support you very much in that recruitment process. So you're never alone, regardless of the stage of journey that you're in. Compliance is a big one. It wraps around everything that we do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you need to walk in and be an expert in compliance and all the CQC policies, because really, who does? But we've got that framework for you. It's like your I suppose your seatbelt in a car. We've got that for you to be able to lead and grow that business.
Yeah. No, great point. And I suppose for us, how can we internally know that we are sort of leading from the front with quality and compliance? Well, one of the things we're incredibly proud of is a disproportionate amount of outstanding ratings, for example, or excellence in Scotland. So 25% of our franchises in England are outstanding, which compares to, is it 4 or 5% for the care industry on the whole? And so, 5 times more care providers at home instead achieve that outstanding rating. And we make no apologies for focusing on a higher number than that. We would love if all of our franchisees could be, but right now 50% is kind of the target for us, isn't it?
And on that, that CQC's standard, they won't go higher than 5%. So 5% of care providers are rated as outstanding. That's that. So even if they've got a business in front of them that, seems to be outstanding, if they've hit their cap, they've hit their cap.
Right, yeah.
So it's if you compare the different numbers of CQC outstanding ratings versus brand, we have won. We've easily got the highest percentage and the highest number, because even CQC, I mean, it's demonstrated here, CQC know that what we do as a brand is so far above and beyond any other brand in the care sector.
Yeah. And all of that comes down to the way in which the regulator standards are packaged into home insteads, and the simplification of that process for our franchisees means they've got a smoother path to achieving that. So let's move on to talk about our care services generally. And whilst there's a real foundation of our care services, we have also over previous years introduced new care services to that offering, all with the aim of keeping people in their own homes. Could you kind of reflect on that a little bit and what that process has looked like?
Yeah, of course. So we touched on it earlier that we want to make sure that we've got additional revenue streams for our franchisees. That obviously benefits the franchisee, but part of the reason we're doing it is benefiting the client and the older people in the area. So there were people, 6-7 years ago who would like home instead level services, but actually they needed a level of care that we weren't providing. And, why weren't we? So we invested heavily in people at National Office because that's our first port of call. And then the team started looking at how we could roll something out like this that would be efficient for the franchisees, it would benefit the clients, and it was compliant as well. And it was kind of easy to do. One big point in that is our quality director, Sanjeev. I think you just smile when you talk about Sanjeev. He is so passionate and so driven about high quality care in the sector. But I think what he brings that perhaps a lot of other people don't is this business mindset as well. So he's looking at the quality and how we can always improve for our clients. But actually, is it operationally efficient for a franchisee to be able to do this? And it's great that, care providers want to roll out services, but if they're doing so at the risk of their business, they're actually risking all of their clients' care. And what Sanjeev and his team have done is made sure that an office can extend and expand into new services at the right time, in the right way, that will be efficient in their business, but also financially make sense too.
Yeah. But actually sometimes slowing down and not expanding into that care service yet might be the right move. And actually once you set up the team and kind of the culture in that business, eventually the time will be right and it can become a real addition to things.
Yes.
Yeah, great point. So we did touch on this a little bit at the start of the episode about the changing world around us, but it's a question on everyone's mind these days, which is technology and how our brands and businesses kind of adopting it and gearing themselves up to be improved by technology, maybe instead of being slowed down. So in a nutshell, what's Home Instead's approach to technology, and how does that help us kind of navigate the future?
I think our approach to anything is never say never. We're really open-minded as a business and as a brand, and whether that's with franchisees, other people in the sector, we're always listening and looking at ways we can improve our operations. Obviously, we are owned by a tech company based in Silicon Valley, which is called Honor. I think a big thing that sets aside Honor from any other tech business is why they set up. So they set up for personal reasons, and Seth is one of the co-founders. He kind of leads on this, and is really passionate. And whenever you speak to him, you can see that passion in him. He wants to do this because of the older person at the end of the service.
Yeah.
And that just runs through us at Home Instead. It's in our core. So Honor are very passionate about ensuring that the end user, the client, has the best possible service that they can, but also how we can make that more efficient for them. Because if we can include tech into a care package, not replacing, but it makes it more financially viable for a client, as well as being more efficient for the business owner, and also connecting the family members into that care package as well. So that is our attitude towards tech. It's never going to replace, but it can absolutely support. And it supports all of those key stakeholders that make up a care service.
So if you use it as a tool to complement the high quality human care, then it's a great thing. And the second it starts to in some way replace it and make things more impersonal, and that might be where some worries come.
That's how we see it.
Yeah. Interesting. So we're sort of closing up soon. We've got a couple more topics to speak about, but this is a really, really important one. Firstly, because potential franchisees might find it a bit of a worry. But for us internally, this is a very primary focus of really everything that we do, isn't it? And what I'm talking about is really how we tackle the problems of recruitment and retention, which the whole care sector faces. But how do we at Home Instead tackle that and ensure we aren't facing the same problems? So firstly, let's talk about the ways in which we can compete with the care professional role. How do we make this appealing when there are so many people looking for various jobs within the care sector?
So before I answer that, I'm just going to give a bit of background. So what tends to happen with changes in policies and legislation is that it tends to really just reflect what Home Instead do.
Okay.
So for us, we're all about ethical employment. We want to make sure that we're looking after our care professionals. And obviously, we're seeing changes in legislation and changes in law about employing people. So 0 hours is an example, like paying for training. Some of these, there are ways that businesses, if they want to, can get around that to be more cost effective. Is it ethical? Probably not. This is something we already do. So our franchisees are already paying for training on day one.
Yeah.
They are really working together with that care professional and making sure they feel valued as an individual. They can see their career progression. I think in a lot of care businesses, they will only train them to the minimum standards. So as an example, the care sector in England, you need to be training someone on a next level once they there's a cap of 12 months. So we do that from day one, but a lot of care providers think I'm probably going to lose that person quite quickly because my retention is pretty poor. So I won't bother until we're probably coming up to about 9 months. Mm-hmm. What message does that say to that individual that's coming into that business? I'm not going to give you the full training because I've got a 12-month window and I don't really think you're going to be here for that long. Mm-hmm. So that's not what we do at all. We really value our care professionals coming in. There are different schemes like mentoring, buddying up, just making sure people feel cared for. We are a care business, and so we need to make sure that we do that. And franchisees can do that in different ways. We're not saying ring this person at 10 a.m. and make sure you've done this. And, we all the policies and procedures, obviously, we've got that set up for you in the right structure and the right format and flow. But you can be, quite flexible with that depending on your skills and how you like to work.
Yeah.
So that I would say is the first thing. And then when it comes to professional development, we go out and visit offices and I'm speaking to a general manager who used to be a care professional.
Yeah.
And so we've got career pathways for every single role in the business. So if somebody is coming in as a care professional saying, one day, I want to be doing what you're doing as the franchisee, well, we've got this career pathway to get them to a general manager. And we have a number of different examples of where an office team member has actually bought their own office or perhaps bought out the owner as well. And that's a really lovely career progression story. And there are so many of those in the network. And then just thinking of development, we've got different training courses that are City and Guilds accredited. That again leans into us being a specialist in dementia care and Parkinson's care because we've got that training. And so there's this just constant message. It's not we look after our carers and that's it. We've got, we don't probably shout about this as much as we should, but we've got all of this backed up evidence of why we do what we do.
And you touched on a few things there which highlight a really important point, which is people aren't just there for pay. A lot of people are. Of course, we all go to work for pay, and that's no different with people who deliver care. But there are a lot of people who might also want to feel part of something, or have a sense of sort of reward and acknowledgement, for example, or actually they're driven by a need to help others. And actually, by understanding everyone's really the spectrum of people's goals and drivers, we can build that into the way in which we support them. I was sat there thinking about, actually, we call them care professionals as a standard, but typically people are called carers or caregivers. And that was a simple way that we attempted to professionalize a role which is typically seen as an unskilled one.
Yeah, and it's an example of us being thought leaders, because we previously called our care professionals caregivers, because we wanted to move away from the quite sterile word of carer. And then we saw more competitors adopting our wording.
Yeah.
And so, and it was the right time for us to move into care professionals, to be able to demonstrate that actually people are very different to other carers in the sector. We want as many people as possible that truly, truly care, that's in their beings like it is in ours. We want people to, caring is probably the most important role in society, and let's make sure that people feel that way as well.
Yeah.
So it's just another, I'm sure other brands are going to start calling themselves care professionals at some point. But obviously as being ahead of the curve and setting that curve, we'll be on to the next thing.
So in a nutshell, finding the right people, being highly selective with the right people, but then focusing your efforts on keeping the right people and ensuring that they're happy at work is a really foundational part of high quality care.
It is. And I think sometimes franchisees, their feedback is, I need more care professionals. Okay, well, let's look at what your care professionals are saying. Okay, I can see they're saying that they don't have enough hours. So how are you combating that? Where's the communication blocker here? And it comes back to that support. Regardless of what stage you're in, we're always looking at kind of every angle of your business to be able to help you improve.
Yeah. So it's time for us to conclude the conversation, which has gone a million different directions, but it's been a really, really good one. It's a standard for us to talk about all these amazing things. And I think we have the benefit of seeing it internally and kind of the passion in really in the brand as a whole, and meeting all the amazing franchisees. But it's really important that we sort of reassure people who are thinking about this or toying with the idea of franchising generally. It's really important to highlight these various things, and hopefully it informs people, in how they can go into conversations with franchise brands or Home Instead or other care brands, and have a certain understanding and sense of, well, yeah, I understand the words, but what does it actually look like in reality? So could you close off then with a few points on, what do we think the future looks like, and what's our vision for continued growth?
Yeah. So who knows what kind of services we'll be doing in 10, 15 years. I think we all think there's massive expansion opportunities that we can delve into. We say at Home Instead, the future hospital is probably going to be in your own home. And we've already started to expand into there to make sure we've set the right foundations for our franchisees so they feel comfortable for continued growth. There's definitely services that we haven't even thought about that we will be doing. There will be tech to support those services, so supporting the client, supporting the office, and supporting the family members as well. And we always, as a brand, we're always thinking blue sky. What does that mean for us? Where can we get to for our franchisees? Because if we're thinking anything different, then we're actually just capping our franchisees in their growth just by doing that ourselves.
Yeah.
So we invest a lot in terms of research and development. We're constantly improving things. Then we also have, of course, we've got the US, who are bigger, older, and we've also got Honor as well to be able to support us in that journey. So, we want to be, I suppose, the Amazon of the care sector. When somebody thinks of elderly care, it's us. And we're able to do all of those different elements to be able to support that person to live at home for as long as they would like to.
On a final note then, what would you say to people that might be listening who are on the fence about sparking a conversation with us?
I would say they can book in a call with Luke for half an hour. It's half an hour of your life.
That they can.
Yeah.
We would be welcomed.
You can do it on your commute, when you're on a walk, whatever it is. But just to really just take that step. It's non-committal. You're just having a conversation. You're able to, if there are any concerns, I mean, hopefully the biggest concerns that you've had, we've raised through this podcast, but really just get in touch with us. And, through the process, if you're concerned about the compliance side, well, let's just get you in touch with somebody who is in the network that also had those concerns or, struggled at some point through their franchise journey and can talk really openly about that with you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 260, obviously, individuals. There's going to be someone that's gone through the things that you're worried about.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you for joining me, Amy.
No, thank you.
I've really enjoyed all the info that you've shared and appreciate the insights.
Great. Thank you.